Hi, this is Julian Tardo, and you are listening to the Us People podcast with Savia Rocks.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Us People podcast. I'm your host, Savia Rocks, and today I've got Julian Tardo here with me today. Hey Julian, how are you?
I'm good, thank you, Savia.
Good. Welcome to the show. Julian, so you're the owner of Church Road Recording Studios.
That's right. Yeah, I set it up with a friend of mine in 1996. It's a commercial recording studio. I now run it with another guy called Paul Pascoe. I kind of own the place, and Paul is like my employee, but we're both sort of producers. And we turn over a small but kind of reliable amount of business.
Yeah.
And I run everything. I do all the accounts, do all the fixing, sweep up the floors.
Oh yeah, we literally do everything. Yeah,
All the glamorous
self-employed.
jobs that nobody
But it's
else.
it's not a bad thing, I suppose, because it's something that you love doing.
Yeah, it's my.
Compared
Do
to
you know what I always say with a business?
yeah.
If you look after it, it looks
It looks
after you.
after you. Yeah, I agree with you. Totally. That makes total sense. What actually got you into having a studio? What made you decide I want my own studio?
Well, I I fell into it because I was making music and I was in a band. We had a few records out. We were a very small little band initially called Earwig in
Oh,
1990. We were just like at college, and we just started coming up with stuff. And then very quickly somebody said, "Oh right, I really like this stuff. I'd like to put it out." Just a local little indie label, and so we put it. Yeah, we put out like 3, 4 records, eventually an album, and then we sort of a couple of little lineup changes, and I did a few more albums. So by the time um, I set up the studio, I'd done like technically like about 3 albums and about 3 or 4 EPs. So
yeah.
I'd been doing it for a decent amount of time,
Wow.
and we'd done a few tours, and things. There were ups and downs, but being in a band is just so hard, and we were poor for ages and ages.
I
We
can
were.
imagine. I can imagine how it
It's
must
just a labor of love, and we weren't the kind of band that was ever going to get in the charts. We were trying to be like underground. We were trying to do something interesting. We knew that it had limited kind of um, scope to sell loads of stuff, but we had really decent coverage in the music press at the time, and we sort of did well. But then by about 1995, 96, I was 26, and I was really starting to sort of, at the back of my mind, panic
yeah.
about, I can't just keep doing this. I'm going to have to get a
Find
proper
something.
job or something. And I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And the, I reconnected with the original guy that had put out some of our indie singles
Yeah.
in 1990, and he had sort of invested in a small PA system, and
Yeah.
he was providing sort of live sound for various kind of venues around Brighton. And I said, "Oh, I'll help you out if you want," because having when you start, playing gigs and stuff, you get really familiar with the whole kind of setup. And I'd also been investing in my own equipment through like the small amounts of money that we were getting from record labels and stuff. I would just kind of, instead of living off it, I would just
Yeah.
go out to the shops and buy equipment with the idea, well, look, I can use this forever.
Yeah. That makes
So
sense.
buy a sampler. It was the time of like drum and bass and stuff where
Oh.
people were making music on an Atari ST
Yeah, I remember.
computer with
Yeah.
Cubase and an S1000 sampler, and that was it. That was your system. You're ready to go, you know? So we just got the same stuff, and we were just, you know, we were self-sufficient, and gradually the equipment sort of was filling up a corner of the flat, you know, and you know, at some point, I re-hooked up with this guy who had a PA system, and we spent time together. We were, you know, doing various gigs, and eventually, like somebody said, maybe we should like put everything together and do a studio,
Yeah,
you know.
that makes
And
sense.
we were like, can we do that? How would we do that? And so we started looking for premises, almost like thinking this is just never going to happen. But we started the ball got rolling by saying it out loud, like, let's do a studio. And I started to think about how we could borrow some money, and you know, what it could look like. And at the same time, I started volunteering at a studio as well, so I saw
Yeah,
how the business kind of worked. And so it just, at some point, somebody found this premises that was being used for rehearsals by some band. It was basically a big concrete old bank vault, and it was
sometimes it's the best
it was just
ones.
like,
Yeah,
oh god, you know, apparently we could get in there, and you know, as long as we get let them rehearse,
yeah.
we can get in there. So that's what we did. We basically just took on this lease, and I seriously thought this is either like the worst thing I'm ever going to do, or this is going to
Or
get
the
me
best
out.
thing.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
and I really did not know. And we just started from there. We didn't have that much money, and we pretty much built everything ourselves. So
yeah.
we paid some guy to draw us some plans, and then we just followed the plans with our rudimentary sort of DIY, you know. And we sort of like put up some ceilings, you know, and we sort of learned to like, you know,
Sometimes
uh,
being spontaneous is the
yeah,
best thing you can do. It can be so much fun.
yeah. We it was a different kind of creativity, because you know
Yeah,
we won't. It's a continuation really, because when you're in a band, you know, you sort of like, you learn, you're making a machine that works, you know, and you're putting together a system. And I've noted that it's very similar in everything I've done. Is you build a kind of system that works.
yeah,
It's based on certain equipment. It's based on certain networks with certain people that you rely on. It's based on a certain way of working, a certain amount of hours, a certain format that it comes. It's all the same, and you just learn what your system is made of, and you create it, and and then you just repeat it, and it just gets better, and you tighten it, you know, the nuts and bolts on it, and it just becomes more and more efficient, and that basically becomes your business. But it's a slow. I mean, it's a slow process, but I always think of that now that I'm producing bands. I always think that at the back of my mind, you know, they're building like their system. What does it consist of? You know, it's like sometimes it's like an amazing drummer that's in the band, and that
yeah,
drummer holds everything together and gives it momentum. Or maybe it's like a completely kind of, you know, crazy like singer that, or vocalist that's got crazy ideas, and elsewhere in their life they have a difficult time getting on with
yeah.
people, but in the
No,
band,
it's true.
like, it's got this amazing energy. And
It's amazing what music does to people.
yeah, so, you know, it's all these little components become the kind of the DNA of the business, you know. And you can change some things, but there's certain things you can't change if it's going to work.
Yeah,
And so, I
that's
mean,
true.
really, with the studio, I got into it because I was already doing it, but I hadn't called it a studio in a way. You
Okay.
know, it was
No,
something
that makes sense.
I was
Yeah,
doing, and it was also like, I mean, people use the term pivot these days.
yeah,
That's what I did, I suppose. I was in the uh, composition side of music.
yeah.
I mean, the other thing that I'm thinking of is that when we were in a band and we were getting advances, you give your advance to the recording studio, because
Yes,
you're
true.
paying to go in
Yeah.
there. So I was like, "Ah, maybe I could get given other people's advance." You know, so I was like, "I wanna get on the other side of the line," You know, because when you're in the music industry, it's like all the
Yeah.
artists are like all the poor people, and in on the
And the
business
business
people,
side.
they're all driving like, you know, flash cars, you know?
That's
It's
true.
like,
No, that is really true.
I'm just gonna hop over that line. So
Put on a
maybe
suit
yeah,
and you're
straddle
good
that
to
line,
go.
you know? So it
A
wasn't
Ju
I mean, it wasn't just to
Aw,
do with money, but it was like a recognition that as an artist, you often aren't the first person in line to get any cash handouts,
that's true.
you know?
It takes
So
sometimes it can take a really long time, even with, publishing as well.
yeah,
For you to get any kind of royalties, it can take an absolute long time.
yeah.
Another question that I wanted to actually ask you is how is it being self-employed at the moment with all this going on?
Well, from my point of view, I'm one of the kind of excluded people. So,
Yeah.
I, am the director of my company,
Yeah.
the Road Studio, and, as a director, I take my payments as dividends rather
Ah,
than
yes.
taking PAYE.
That's it.
So there are a lot of people like, raising that as a massive concern because we were all, like, excluded from
Yeah.
we're not PAYE
Yep.
employees, and we're not self-employed people
Self-employed.
sole traders, like
Yeah.
builders and stuff. So, you know, and it's there was an undertone of you take dividends because it's some sort of tax dodge, which,
Yeah.
like, not something that I've ever, you know, been conscious of because, you know, when you when I actually set up my company, I actually did take PAYE because initially, because I thought that's how you did it. But then
Yeah.
about 10 years down the line, somebody said to me, "Nobody does that, mate. What are you doing that for? Everyone takes dividends because it's much easier. You just do it in one go at the end of the year.
Yeah.
It's simpler." And it's like, "Okay, well, I'll do it like that then." And it's like, you know, when you realize that a lot of the world does it like that, you tend to go with the herd a
Go
little
with the
bit,
yeah, sometimes you do go with the herd,
you
which
know?
makes it a lot easier for you and possibly your accountant
Yeah,
who's doing it if
exactly.
you're not doing it yourself. Because I know a lot of self-employed people do their accounts themselves because
Yeah,
accountants can be really expensive as
yeah.
well.
I mean,
It takes
when you've got a company, you have to have a chartered accountant,
yeah,
as far as I
yeah,
know. So you do have
yeah,
to have an accountant. You can't do it yourself,
yeah.
and it is expensive. It's like a substantial chunk of my
Yeah, of
turnover,
your
of
yeah.
my whole year's turnover is just to pay for the accountant.
Unless you have a really good accountant who helps you to understand what accountancy is, and then there are so many things that I think self-employed people don't know that they can do themselves. But
Mm,
what accountants have a tendency to do is they do it for you to make extra money
yeah,
for themselves. But if you have a good accountant, if you're lucky enough to have a really good accountant that says, okay, I'm going to teach you how to do this, you do this part yourself,
yeah,
and then it will take a large chunk. I won't need to take that money from you anymore.
yeah,
So you'll learn how to do it. But a lot of them have that tendency to want, obviously, I know it's about the money, I know it's a business, and we all need to make money to survive and live.
yeah, yeah,
But especially in this time, I just feel that accountants should be able to help you that little bit more to say, if I teach you this,
mm,
then you won't have to pay for it and you just pay me this amount. So
yeah,
all in all, that kind of makes sense in that
yeah.
area.
It's one of the, tricky things. For years and years, I stayed with the same accountant because, you know, I don't like thinking about money. I like
Yeah.
to just go down to
Same as
the
me.
studio
Yeah.
and work with bands and stuff, and
You like being on the creative side and
yeah,
you say to yourself, let me let the accountant deal with the business side and that's
yeah.
fine.
I mean, for me, it's like it's kind of if I've got the money, it's well worth paying the accountant to take that
Yeah.
headache because it's not really just like uh, numbers and accounts. It's all the other headache stuff like
Yeah.
letters from HMRC.
Well, yeah, I was just gonna say that.
Fill in
Yeah.
this form by this date. Oh, you've missed this date. You've got this, you know, it's like and that's happening whilst you're organising your week, you know,
Yeah.
which is like, oh, you know, I've got to be at the studio at 10 a.m. And I'm there till like, you know, 10 p.m. It's like,
Yeah.
you know, and if you're doing that either 3 or 4 days on the trot, the last thing you want to do is like look at letters and stuff. So they get pushed into,
Especially letters with fines on it.
yeah,
Yeah.
you know. So
Oh, that's so
it's that stuff is the hard stuff. That's why it's, worth paying an accountant. But, it's a question of balance, like everything, it would the best system would be not to work quite as much, charge
yeah,
more for your
yeah,
service, buy
yeah,
yourself more time, and
yeah,
do the accounts yourself, you know?
yeah. That makes
So
sense. That
it
makes total sense.
but it's very difficult to, control the speed at which you're driving that car, because it's kind of,
Yeah,
your business fluctuates. Or well, in my business, in recording, it's very hard to organize, like, recording projects, because you can have a lot of work on for a short amount of time. Like, if somebody comes in and says, "I'm gonna record an EP," and
yeah.
you have a recording day when you put down some drums, you have another day, and then there's another day, and each day comes off the back of the last one. We've still got this to do, and we've still got that to do, and so you get a a session that kind of explodes outwards into your diary for like a month, let's say. But then at the end
Yeah.
of it, if you haven't been talking to other people about what's happening at the end of that session,
It's hard.
it's dead.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
you could be
Yeah.
dead for 2 weeks or dead for 3 weeks, and you're waiting for other things to come in. And it doesn't often go completely dead, but it kind of it goes in waves, basically. It's like
A lot of creative people have told me that. It's like one minute you have so much, next minute you have nothing.
yeah,
And you're twiddling your thumbs and you're thinking, okay, what am I going to do? No one's coming in.
yeah,
But it's funny how it always arrives at exactly the right time when you do need something to happen sometimes.
right.
So I find that in itself a really positive thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just, like, I think of it as like, being, like a fisherman. Like, you've just got all your lines in the water, and you're waiting for a bite from 3 different, um, places, maybe, you know?
Yeah.
Remember, I told you that we opened our studio in a bank vault, and one day I went in a bit sleepy-eyed on a Sunday morning, and I used the wrong lock in the door, and I
Oh no.
did the key off in the door because it just stuck, and I couldn't get it out,
Oh man.
and so
You don't want to get locked inside there.
and it was a bank vault, so
Yeah, exactly.
it wasn't just any so so I phoned up this bloke, locksmith.
I'm surprised you got reception in there, to be honest.
It was a nightmare. No, I was outside, I couldn't get
Oh,
in.
you're
Yeah,
lucky. Oh,
and,
because if you was inside, it would have been a completely different story.
yeah, I might have still been in there. I might just be a skeleton now.
Don't say that, Julian. Stop.
So, yeah, anyway, the interesting part of
Oh.
this story, because this is actually a good thing that I've taken forward, is that the locksmith said, "Oh, which number did you?" He fixed the door, and I got in. It was fine. I was like, "Thank you so much." He said, "Which number did you call?" Because I said, "Oh, I looked. There were about 3 or 4 people in the book. I can't remember which one." And he said, "'Cause they're all me." So
Oh,
this locksmith was under 4 different names.
he's smart.
Yeah, that's a good idea, isn't it?
That is a good idea.
And I thought, "Ah, that's a good idea." So,
So it doesn't matter which one you call, you know you're gonna get him. Oh man, that's quite cool. Unless he
yeah,
changes his voice on each one,
yeah.
possibly, as
Well,
well. So that might be quite cool.
I mean, that's why I sort of, I ended up sort of doing quite a I lecture as well as doing,
Yeah, I was gonna
studio.
get into your lecturing as well.
I do, a few things. I started doing, I started doing video, working on videos for a while ago, and I now do the sort of sound on, in for film as well, like location sound.
Yeah.
And that you sort of just keep, if you know a lot, a lot of people, you keep getting asked to do things that aren't
Yeah,
necessarily the your main
definitely.
thing. But
Yeah.
what I find is that it's that smooths out the peaks and troughs in your business.
Do you find it's better to know more of one thing or little of everything?
I don't know.
How would you find it?
I mean, I try not to know a little about everything. I try to know
Yeah.
as much as I can about the thing that I'm doing at that time.
Perfect.
I feel like, I feel really I need to I'm the kind of sort of learner that
Yeah.
has to, like, know all the angles before I'm comfortable about talking about any of it. You
Yeah.
know, I'm sort of
Yeah.
I tend to be like in meetings, I'm the one that keeps his mouth shut until the meeting's over, and then I've
Yeah.
got an opinion, you know?
But that's actually the smartest way to do things, I think,
Yeah,
in some cases, because you've listened to everybody else's opinion and they don't expect you to say anything.
yeah. I mean,
And then you've got all your notes down and then you can say what you really wanna say.
yeah, it just takes me a bit longer to sort of process, 'cause I wanna be confident about everything. So, you know, like when I started doing the location sound, like working with
Yeah.
other cameramen and the stuff, I didn't know much about how all the cameras sync together and like the sound and different codes and stuff like that. So I didn't get involved in that straight away. It was like I spent ages reading up on it and websites and building up small amounts of equipment and testing it out myself until
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I know exactly how that works now. And then I started kind of pushing myself a little bit more with it. I just didn't like the idea of getting into stuff. I mean, you can wing it some of the
Yeah.
time, and I know lots of people that I work with. We've all winged it one time or another.
Oh, yeah, totally.
You know, that's part of it, isn't it? It's like,
I think that's part of creativity as well, is sometimes you're not gonna know everything,
yeah.
and that's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing at all.
No, it's being receptive,
Yeah.
being, always aware, trying to like, I always tell my students about just trying to keep listening because, like, listen when you're producing, it's funny how quickly you can kind of stop listening and you start to just produce using your eyes on the
Yeah.
screen, placing things like arrangement wise, or maybe you've got a kind of idea in your head that you're not actually listening to the sound of the thing you're actually making.
Yeah.
You're sort of just going with this kind of concept that's over there, and it's trying to connect that kind of awareness about being able to perceive straight away the way that something is.
Yeah.
Like, so you can hear if something's even if you're really excited about a great take, you could hear that maybe it was a bit distorted,
Yeah.
and being able
No, that
to
makes
say,
sense.
"Can we do
Yeah.
that again?" And being able to spot things. And it's a little bit like, be training yourself to, in awareness, like almost like meditation,
Yeah.
where you sort of kind of you're just open all the time. Um to the way things are. I don't know whether that sounds terrible.
It makes total sense. I know you've been a lecturer for over 22 years.
Mm,
How has it been? I remember before we started recording, you told me the story, but I
mm.
just want the listeners to know how you actually got into being a lecturer because I think that would be really good for them to hear.
I had started the studio, in 1996, and, I was recording a guy, who was doing an album, a friend of mine called John Cunningham, and he'd done a few albums, and he'd started lecturing somewhere. And I didn't really think twice about it. But
Yeah.
one day I just got a phone call from him, and he said, "You know that college I work for? Well, we've just taken on a whole load of new students, and they're coming in September. And we haven't got enough lecturers, and we need lecturers." And I said, "Well, I'm not qualified to be a lecturer. I had a
Mm.
degree at that point. I'd been to
Yeah.
university, but that was a way back. I'd just been like doing music and
Yeah.
recording and stuff. So I kind of was out of that completely. And he said, "Oh, don't worry about it. Just like we need people that know what they're doing, and the
Yeah.
students really respect people that actually do it for a living."
Yeah.
So I
No,
said,
that makes
"Well,
sense.
I said, well, I'll come over," and I met some, great people who are doing it, and a whole load of other kind of people that were running studios that were like, "Oh, I know you. You're like a rival." Everyone had kind of heard about this kind of thing that was going on. That was like they were giving away jobs or something. So, and I just like I went to this meeting, and anyway, I got a small amount of teaching. I was part time. Uh, a few hours a week teaching Cubase, I think it was initially.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And, I knew at that point I'd sort of already started. I when I started out, all I had was Cubase, and I had very limited equipment, and I spent all day, every day looking at it and understanding it, and I started getting really into the deep part of, coding on it using hexadecimal and stuff like that, and, just being able to sort of, like, push everything that I had to the max so that I could compete, you know? And so whenever anyone I got to know a few people that had Cubase, so that they'd start to phone me up and say, "Could you come and show me how this bit works? Because I don't understand it." So I'd already been doing that. So when I got that bit of teaching and he said, "Can you teach them Cubase?" It was like, "Yeah, easy."
Yeah, why not?
You know?
And you get paid for it, so it's not too bad at all.
Yeah, and,
Well,
so, I just really didn't realize that I'd gained that skill. If
yeah,
somebody had said, "Could you lecture on a sequencer?" I'd be like, "I have no, I can't do that." But then all
I
of a
have
sudden
no
it's
idea,
like, "Well
yeah.
well,
Yeah,
why can't you do that? You use it all the time." And that's one of the sudden realizations that you've picked up skills along the way, that are kind of transferable, some of
yeah.
the time. And so,
What
yeah,
what actually makes you passionate about what you do? What inspires you to do music?
I'm very much driven by, the idea that there are lots of different, personalities out there that want to find a voice, and I like
Yep,
difference,
that's true.
and I
Yeah,
like
that's true.
individuality, and I like, the strangest things. I'm often sort of
Yeah.
really I mean,
Intrigued by it.
yeah, I'm inspired by the people that wanted to push things further. And so, when I was at college, I used the library massively. I sort of fell in love with the library, like looking through photography
Yeah,
books. And for me, I was, a kid from Cardiff. My parents hadn't been to university or anything. My dad's a hairdresser, and I was like,
mm,
I'd sort of started to I liked English. I remember, like, when I first said I wanted to do English A level, I remember the teacher going, "No, you're not doing that." What, So it was like, "No, no, I really do like books." And it was like, "Really?" And they were like, "Really?" They wanted to sort of, you know, and I was like, "Yeah." And so, I really did. It's just a kind of that uh, I fell in love with all those kind of, the like art and stuff like that, obvious stuff straight initially, like Andy Warhol and, great photographers, from the 60s and 70s, and you sort of just I got into that, and I started, and then, starting to know about kind of avant-garde jazz, like, what John Coltrane was
yeah,
doing, Miles Davis was doing, and, uh, some of the obscure kind of rock stuff and electronic music from the 70s,
yeah,
like trying to find all that stuff back, and then post-punk, music in around London in the 1980s. That was a
yeah,
kind of thing for me. It was like, I love it all. I wanna be different. I want to be obscure. I wanna be weird, and explore the stranger parts of the world that you're
yeah,
kind of familiar with every day.
yeah.
I didn't I
No, that makes sense.
I was never really attracted to the idea of being in some sort of schmaltzy band that are just, like, playing up to the popular sound of the day. I ju
Yeah,
I was more like, uh, really, like, inspired by, um, kind of things like Kraftwerk, or, you know, um, just some of the post-punk bands, like The Fall, uh that kind of thing, just like crazily weird, like something that for me was just straight strange. Like,
yeah.
why are they doing that? Why does it sound like
You like it sounds to me that you like things that are different.
yeah,
You like things that
individuality.
you like things that people might find strange and walk away from because they're scared of it, but you
Yeah,
like things. If you see it strange, you jump into it
yeah,
and you want to know more about it.
yeah. And I think I think sometimes, you know, you I'm aware that some people bury that part of themselves
A
and
lot of
never
people
do,
bury that part of them. I
and
think that's out of fear.
but that's like, that's what the great artists do, is they are strong enough to be proud of what they are, you
Mhm.
know? And that's really what
Yeah,
I think
totally.
any artist should be, is like, I'm gonna take that photo, or I'm gonna use that sound, or I'm gonna be, you know, dance like this, and I
Mhm.
don't care what you think. I literally those are the the best things. I remember listening to, an interview with, Viv Albertine from the Slits.
Ah.
No, who was it? No, it was Kim Gordon from bassist Sonic Youth, and she was saying that now people pay to watch me look confident,
Hey, I like that actually.
and that's kind of that I understand that. You know, when you see
Yeah, I
a
understand
really
it.
strong, confident performer,
Yeah.
it actually when you're watching them, part of your pleasure is thinking, "I could be like that,"
Yeah.
you know?
Which is nice in a way because it uplifts you.
Yeah.
And I think anything that uplifts you, sorry, in a positive way is good for your soul, not
Mm.
just your alter ego. It's
Yeah.
good for your actual soul as a person.
Yeah.
So I think that's really good. Oh, that
I
makes
think it's
sense.
about
If
being
yeah.
confident and finding your voice.
I
Yeah.
think a lot of people in the world have lost their voice, especially with everything that's going on today. A lot of people have lost their confidence, their voices. Some people say their mojos. It doesn't matter how you portray it. But I find that a lot of people at the moment find it hard to just be themselves. It's like they're trying to live up to what people want them to be.
Mm. Yeah.
And like you're saying, you're totally right by saying if you can just find who your voice inside you, and bring it out, you might actually find that a lot of people appreciate that a lot more than you trying to have this facade of someone else that you're really not
Yeah.
comfortable with being.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
I definitely think that, um, that would be the worst outcome for anyone, is to just, and it's very easy to do, you just cruise along out of school.
and time flies.
Yeah.
Time flies so quickly, and you before you know it, you're in this like, oh my gosh, is this really me? Am I really pretending to be this person? I always say to people, the time where people think the most is at nighttime.
Mm.
Because you're by yourself.
Yeah.
You have no one around you and it's silent. Well, hopefully it's silent.
Mm.
But you have that silence around you, and I think that's the time where you reflect more than any other time
Yeah.
because you have no influences around you apart from your own.
Yeah.
And your thoughts are the most powerful thing in the world. They can make you successful or they can be your worst enemy.
Mm.
And so, no, that's totally right. No, I agree with you there.
Yeah.
If you had to if you wanted to play with an artist, so who is your icon? If there was one artist that you admire that you wish you could record in a studio, who would it be?
Well, he's not alive, it'd be John
It
Coltrane.
doesn't matter.
Yeah,
No, that's
it'd
fine.
be John
It could be dead or
Coltrane
alive.
probably.
Yeah.
It'd be
Why would you
it
choose him?
because, uh, what he the way he I mean, you know, I've recorded a lot of saxophone players now, and I know that
Oh yeah.
instrument. I'm not a saxophone player myself, but I know the way that can sound, and
Yep.
out of everyone else that I've ever heard play the saxophone, nobody sounds like John Coltrane.
Fair
Isn't that
enough.
weird? Isn't that like
That's
so
fair enough.
just like it's basically the same instrument, and it's
But everyone
just
has a
his
different
motor.
feeling when they're playing.
Yeah,
What you have in your heart when you play, it's not just about picking up a saxophone and start playing. It's about the feeling
yeah,
of playing. And I think that spiritually, I
yeah.
think that is such a big thing.
It's like, with him, it's like it's so inspiring to see someone who has a really intimate knowledge of,
Yeah.
scales and modes, that are quite complex, but
Yeah.
he hops around them like a bird on a tree branch from one thing to another effortlessly, you know?
Yeah.
and it's that that is truly beautiful, you know?
See?
It's
No,
just,
that
like,
makes sense.
so elegant and, it's just inspiring, and I mean, I'm a guitarist. I want I want to have that kind of, facility to have played everything and tried everything, but then to boil it down to connecting it back to your own personal voice that is something that will resonate with somebody else. And it's a real struggle. Like, you get when you first get into this, you get very inspired by all the other great stuff that's come before you, but trying to find your own personal voice amongst that, it's easy to get lost within it as well. So it takes even more guts and determination to lose the education you've had, and to try and sort of push it to one side and think, "Well, what am I gonna do now?" So
No, that makes sense.
and, I mean, John Coltrane, amongst many others, I'm not just saying that he did this, but, this is a bloke that, um played in very standard kind of, uh, bands up to a certain point, and then
Yeah,
created his own sort of unit that did something quite different from what he didn't have to do that, and at the time,
yeah,
it wouldn't have been appreciated that he changed into that different mode of doing things, and then
yeah,
even later, as he got to the end of his quite short life, I think he died when he was about 43 or something, but, um he started just doing these kind of like just him solo and a drummer, and some of his latest like CDs are just like so spare, and it was almost like he'd come through it, but gone
yeah.
the whole process, so he'd completely simplified what it was that he was gonna say, you know? And it's just like that directness. Another story is that, somebody was describing watching Picasso, um, do a drawing, and this is a film that you can see on YouTube, I think. It's him, like, in front of a blank canvas, and he's basically just sitting there for, like, an hour or 2, not doing anything, and then eventually he stands up and goes, and he's, like, really determined, and he goes, "Dik, dik, dak, dak, dik," and he just pretty much gets it.
Yeah.
Like, he's, like, so definite, so he's completely boiled it down in his head to what it was he wanted to do, you know? So you do your thinking beforehand, I think,
It's like waiting
and
for
try and be
creativity to come
definite.
to you. Yeah.
Yeah, you sort of
Yeah, no,
just,
that makes sense to me.
you have to try and yeah, it's a tension all the time between, uh, doing things one way and doing things another way, and there's never a right way to do things. It's very much about
I think
I
that's the
always say
best
to
thing about
bands,
it, that there is
they
never a
they
right way
need
to do things.
yeah. But difficulties and, like, "Oh, I tried this last time, but now this isn't working." That kind of problem is actually like a good tension because when you get problems, it makes you try a little
Yeah.
bit harder to try and figure a way around the problem. So, with my own music, I'm very much into almost like creating problems for myself, like not recording in the same
Yeah.
way that I record bands necessarily, where you might need to be a bit more efficient, but I almost like try and set up problems, along the way by maybe recording something badly at the start, and then everything becomes informed by the DNA of that particular, it sort of like
Yeah.
sets you off on
No,
a,
that
it's
makes
a bit like, sort of like, uh, if you're a photographer, like using a certain type of film, which is always
yeah.
gonna alter your perception of something, so it's like a
Yeah,
limitation. So
totally.
limitations are really good things, um, and working within ten like that tension system where you can only go so far that way or so far this way, and then you run into problems. That's actually quite a good way of
But
working.
that's the good thing about being creative because we like to find solutions for problems.
Mm,
We always
yeah,
like to find a solution to a problem, and it drives us inside to be able to do that.
Yeah,
So that's
absolutely.
definitely who.
Yeah.
If you could have one quote, okay, Julia, if you could choose one quote that represents who you are as a person, what quote would you choose and why would you choose that particular quote? I got Julian.
Honestly, I don't have a clever answer to that. Uh,
Is there anything that
I'm reading
resonates
through.
with you when it comes to having a quote? Is there anything that resonates with you that you've taken with you within your life and saying, you know what, that's a really good quote. I'm going to keep that with me and let it go with me because it makes me feel something inside.
One quote that always comes back to me is Kurt Vonnegut's, he's talking about an aunt or an uncle of his that used to say, if they were having a cup of tea together, if this isn't nice, then tell me what is, you know? And I often we do say that, like, to each other, like, sometimes you can, forget how lucky you are,
Mhm.
with simple things
Yeah.
can be very, you don't actually need to, get loads of,
Materialistic things
materialistic
or
things.
yeah,
I'm actually really happy with, like,
small
very
simple
simple. Yeah,
simplicity.
and that says a lot. So I know that's not a life-changing
No,
quote
it's
or
fine.
anything, but
No,
it is a
no, it's
quote.
alright. It's whatever resonates with you. So
Yeah,
it like
that's
you say,
definitely part.
simplicity.
Yeah,
A lot of people wouldn't even say simplicity. They would come up with this big quote maybe, and I don't know whether they're saying it just to have a big quote, but you've said to me your quote is simplicity.
yeah,
Yeah. And I think that resonates a lot
yeah,
with a lot of people because a lot of people can't find what simplicity is.
yeah.
So
I mean, that's definitely one of the things of, the lockdown that is, I mean, it's quite hard to be happy with not doing things, and it's,
yeah.
um, something that musician friends of mine are like, "This is nothing has changed." You know? I'm still not going out, and I still spend all day making songs, or sounds on my computer.
Oh,
The main difference is now that nobody's hassling me to go out, and it's sort of like,
now that makes sense.
I don't know.
If you could give someone advice because they want to start their own business, having a studio, what advice would you give them?
Well, now it's like I wouldn't like to be somebody starting a studio business now. Having said that, though, the world has completely changed. There are so many different kind of portals out there now for music producers to advertise what they do and get paid. Like there's, a thing called Sound Better that has now been bought by Spotify for producers and kind of musicians, and it can put musicians in touch with producers or producers in touch with, vocalists, for instance, or
That's cool.
and
That is
and
a
you can
cool
add,
thing.
like, it's sort of like you can put up a job and people can then sort of go for it.
Yeah.
So that kind of thing is like a new world that was very difficult for my generation 20 years ago to there were agents that could get you work, but the few and far between and hard to get
Yeah.
an agent as hard as if you were an actor, um,
Yeah.
but so that has changed, and being able to control your own website and advertising, that has changed. That's a good thing. There are a lot more people listening to music these days, so that's a
Yep.
good thing.
Definitely. Yeah.
That all of
For
those
sure.
things are positives. On the other side, it's, like, extremely challenging, like, paying your rent every month,
Yep.
having insurance, um, fluctuations in how you get paid by people, people paying you late, having to chase things
As
up,
they do. Yeah.
all that kind of stuff is incredibly challenging, and sometimes I just wanna just, like, get rid of it, it gets on top of me.
Yeah.
Uh, but then, other things will work really smoothly. I mean, one of the best things for me is, like, you meet the people you meet and the people you work with, they become kind
Yeah.
of pals.
Family.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's like that's the best bit of it, is it's kind of it's not really like work.
Yeah.
It's kind of like you're in a room and you're basically making this song, and it's great, you know, and at the end of it, it comes out and other people get to listen to the work, and that
Oh,
that
that makes sense.
that's amazing. That's what so my advice to people is that they have to realize that that's kind of what it is about. It's not necessary. You don't definitely don't get into it for making money, you know,
Yeah.
because the only way to make money is to do a particular type of pop music, you know,
Yeah,
and
that's
and
true.
if you don't
Yeah.
wanna do that, then don't expect to connect with lots of money. Really, the only other reason to do it is to do it for yourself because you wanna do it or you're driven to do
And
it.
you love it.
Yeah,
Yeah. That
and it's
makes
like
total sense.
your whatever, your calling or something. That's really why I do it, is that I just love
Yeah.
messing about with music equipment and making songs, and it's just great fun, you know, I love all that. It's my
Was
passion.
there ever a time, Julian, where you wanted to give up on what you were doing because you felt like you had a lack of money or you felt like you didn't have the support that you wanted to get from people? Was there ever a time where you said that, "Oh, you know what, I can't do this no more because of this"? How did you drive yourself to bring yourself back up to continue to do what you love?
Well, one example of that is really like when I changed from doing music into the studio. So that
Yeah,
was like pivoting opens up new avenues,
that's true.
and that kind
Yeah.
of re um, explodes your interest in in a slightly different angle on things.
Yeah.
That's probably
Yeah.
happened several different times because teaching has become a different angle, video became a different angle, you know, so don't limit yourself, I would say. You know,
Yeah.
those are
That's good advice.
those are
Yeah.
the things that have dragged me out of being, pissed off with the whole sort of process. But I mean, the other thing was like if I can recall, like around 2008, where there was the financial crash. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, I
I
do
don't. I
remember
mean,
that.
you're younger, so you might not have been actually doing
Hey,
it.
I'm not as young as you think,
Right.
Julian.
Okay. But anyway, so 2008, I remember pretty much everything went dead. So we've had a kind of an instance of this kind of lockdown kind of before
Yeah,
in the business
yeah,
world, like for music, for me, like the phone went dead,
yeah, I can
yeah,
imagine.
in the tail end of 2008. And so,
Yeah.
you know, after you've swept the floors and tidied up a bit, and you're thinking, "Shit, there's still nobody coming in," you know, what am I gonna do now?
Aw.
So I started. I mean, I felt kind of a bit embarrassed, but what I thought was, I'm just gonna ask people that I really like. I'm just gonna give them
Yeah,
some free time. So I
yeah,
emailed 2 or 3 different people and just said, "Here's a free couple of days in the studio. You know, you don't know me, but I absolutely love your stuff." And I basically just, like, sent out emails to people. I got a few things back, and I found that I ended up
yeah,
recording some of those people, and some of those things went on after that and grew into something else. Other things I kinda learned from, like, you know, "Oh, that was a really weird way of working that I hadn't thought of before." So that was a good thing to kind of deliberately put myself into a kind of position that would be challenging, you know? Uh, and I think that's a really good thing to do, I think, if you're feeling stagnant, is to look sideways, you know? Instead of just keeping on sort of trying to pursue this kind of goal that you've been trying to pursue previously and carrying, you know, you're trying to get to this thing still, just look sideways and you probably see people doing something slightly different from you, but it kind of cross feed into your life and
yeah,
open up much more interesting kind of vistas of possibilities.
yeah,
You might see people, you know, in photography or video, and you actually can pull some of the ways of working into what you do. You know, even though it's a different
yeah, that's the
discipline,
truth. Yeah,
you can sort
yeah,
of, you know, I've really learned from that. And that's one of the reasons why I love going to um, art galleries, like going up to Tate and stuff like that, where you sort of will see something and it just makes it does something to my brain that I see certain things as a concept, and I go, "Oh, right, I could make a song that's like that." But it's actually I'm looking at a cubist print, and I'm like, "Oh, yeah." So if you I could actually make a piece of music that does that, and then and it just inspires
Oh,
me, you know? It's nutty, but you wouldn't like I say to, um, some of my students are, around sort of 18, 19, 20, and they're
yeah.
totally into drum and bass, let's say, or bass
Oh, yeah.
music, and they don't wanna do anything else. And I keep saying to them, "You are either gonna get bored with drum and bass in 2 or 3 years,
Eventually. Yeah, eventually.
or you're gonna get bored with music full stop, or making it, and you're gonna be ending up, like, just working." You've got to start widening
Accept
your,
your yeah.
understanding and appreciation of art in general.
Yeah.
You've gotta read
No, that's the
you've gotta
truth.
read the you've gotta read the media, you've got to read the news. You can't just be
But I think people are so in that little box, they don't wanna come out of it because they feel that's what's in at the moment.
yeah,
Like, a lot of people in the world go only with what's in at the
mm,
moment. They don't think out of that, and then I remember you were saying to me, when we first started the podcast, you were saying to me as you were teaching, becoming a lecturer, you were thinking about different avenues that you could take, and when you were young and you were doing music, you're like, "I can't do this forever. I need to be able to do something else."
mm,
So then you thought to yourself, "Okay, if I'm doing music, okay," and then the lecturing came up, you took the opportunity. And I think life is about taking the opportunity
yeah,
if it comes towards you, because you never know what could happen or blossom from it.
yeah.
So I think that's an actual beautiful thing within itself. Uh, Another thing I wanted to ask you is, what advice would you give to your fans or followers? And we all have them. Out there about being positive within the music industry. What advice would you give people about being positive in the music industry and how to better themselves?
I mean, what you just said about, not saying no to every single opportunity is
Yeah.
definitely a good thing. Um, but I I would, there's a kind of overarching kind of philosophy of what the music industry is, which is that it's, screwed and that people can't make
Yeah.
money, and that's kinda not true,
Yeah.
it's an industry in change, and it's massively changing the paradigm by which it makes its money, and
Yeah.
you
Totally.
I think there's lots of opportunities for people to take control of their careers and, expand all those opportunities and keep hold of, their copyrights, be
Yeah.
able
That's
to,
important.
one band that I've worked with is Fujira Miyagi, and, they're from Brighton, and, their manager, uh, Martine McDonough, who's a great woman, she, she was one of the first people that I saw who was basically like, "We're not giving away our copyrights to anyone. You're keeping hold of them. We're not signing a deal with this place or that place. We're gonna we're gonna always make it sure that you get the copyrights back," And so that band is still going and still, yeah, they've been, really fortunate with, advertising using their music, and all the time that's happening, they're making money. So, in back in the day where I signed a contract with, 4AD, and, the kind of contracts that you did in those days was that you basically gave away everything, 100% of everything in perpetuity, so you never get it back, and that
Yeah.
was what was expected at the time, and that I'm glad that's gone. We're in a new system now where artists can define,
And they're fighting for what
yeah,
they
they can
deserve.
define the
Yeah.
deals that they make, and if they're
Yeah.
savvy and they're educated, they know you don't need, a huge amount of legal expertise to know the value of your copyrights, and to
That's true.
say,
Yeah.
"This is mine."
That's where publishing comes into it as
Yeah,
well.
absolutely. Um, it's similar with, photography as well, isn't it? It's like,
Oh yeah, totally.
photographers are much more savvy these days about giving the value of their photos.
Yeah.
It's very easy to forget what it is that you're actually creating, and it doesn't mean
Yeah.
nothing. It doesn't count for nothing. Where
To them it doesn't count for anything, but I believe to us, our creativity is sensitive to us. It's a part of us. So we don't always want to let it go, but sometimes we have to understand that we must let it go because it's something that is important to us that keeps us going.
mm,
So I think as we grow older or get older or understand the business more, with time comes wisdom.
mm,
With wisdom, there is time. So I think all in all, if you're able to combine and like you always say, like you said in the podcast a few times, is just jump out of that box
mm,
and understand things. You'll learn a lot more
yeah.
and things. And there's nothing wrong with making a mistake. There's nothing absolutely wrong with making
No,
any
a
mistakes.
mistake is just like an extra few
A
hours
lesson.
you've taken down the
Yeah,
side, you've been exploring, you
yeah.
know?
So yeah, no, that makes total
Yeah,
sense.
so
Julian,
yeah.
where can we find you, Julian? So
Uh,
your social media,
I'm
your
on
Instagram.
I'm on Facebook, Julian Tardo on Facebook, and, I'm on, um, Instagram as Church Road
Hey,
Studios. I mean, I'm on everything that everyone else is on, I guess, but the things that I mean, I do get quite a lot of, you know, initial business coming through Facebook, and, Instagram is a great way of, like, advertising what you've done. So
yeah,
they're
that is
kind
big.
of essentials. My stuff is on Spotify as the band Insides and Earwig,
Okay, guys, check it out, please.
and I also use, Spotify for, like, create playlists of all the other stuff that I've worked on, with other artists. Um, so those are probably the kind of main places. I do have a website as well, which is, churchroad.net, which is for the studio.
Perfect.
So, I'm out there.
I like
Come
the
and
way you said
come
that
and find
afterwards.
come and find me.
I wish everyone could see it because he went all serious for a second when he was saying everything. And then he had this huge smile at the end when he said, I'm out there. Julian, I want to thank you so much for coming on the Ask People podcast.
Thanks,
And
Savia.
to everyone listening, I want to say thank you for listening. And please remember to subscribe on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, and any other platform that you prefer to listen to. Please follow us on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. And if you'd like to donate, you can donate through PayPal on all it is paypal.me/Us People podcast. And I want to say thank you for listening. Stay positive, stay happy, and as always, continue to be kind to one another.